Welcome back to Deal Flow. Ryan Ray here as always. Good to see you all or hear you, or I guess I'm not seeing or hearing you. Let me just apologize in advance to the listeners. Listeners, I am on a fast that's about 40 hours deep right now. So I might have a
Ooh.
little, yeah. If the questions sound weird or wonky or I mumble more than normal, just a little grace on today's episode as I'm here, I'm present, I'm accounted for, I'm pushing through, but I'm really hungry. But let's get to our
But
guest.
you look great.
Oh well, thank you. Well, I'll tell you. So I've got a bet with a buddy. We're both Red Sox fans, and the Red Sox
Nice.
come play the Rangers in August.
I'm from Massachusetts too. 508 represent. So
Oh,
yeah.
nice. And
Yeah.
so the Celtics won last night, so that's great.
Hmm.
And so we had a bet on a weight loss challenge, and we talked about putting money up and all this stuff. And I said, man, money's not going to motivate me to lose weight. I mean, a lot of money would, but $1,000 or whatever, it's not going to do it for me. And so I came up with the idea that the loser has to wear a onesie to the game. Yes. And so, of course, the Ranger Stadium's indoors, so it'd be okay indoor, but still in August, you got to get out the car, park, walk all the way to the stadium in the onesie, sit there for 3 hours, and walk back out. And you got
You
about
got to make it a really, really tight onesie too if it's a weight loss challenge. One that's like all the wrong bits in all the wrong places, right? Just like super embarrassing, just
well,
like spilling over stuff like that. That's got to be how it works.
that or I found a walrus one that's got the hood with the big teeth sticking down in front
Oh,
of his face. So I might do that one so you can't really see the game.
yeah.
So
I like
anyway,
it.
so that caveat's out. Go ahead and introduce yourself, and we'll get into the show.
Yeah, no, I'm a onesie admirer here, but also my name is Loren Vandegrift. I am many things. I'm investor, buyer, seller, but I'm my main day to day job is as a broker for business exits.com, business exits. I'm one of the three partners there, and we focus on my specialty is sort of kind of all ranges, kind of small mid market from anywhere from about $1 million to 5 million, the kind of SBA range, and then my specialty is the bigger deals. So anywhere from like 7, 8, all the way to about 140 million. That's about the biggest we've done. So kind of, which sounds like a huge range, but weirdly it's not. So,
Yeah.
Being larger than this thing called the SBA loan, which we can talk about, and then smaller than the big, like large, big banks would sell. It's actually a really tiny range, strangely, even though it sounds like such a difference in money,
Yeah. So on one level, obviously 5 million to 80 million is a big difference. But to your point, the way the market shakes out, it's not as it's odd. You find a lot more people that have businesses that are doing 20, 30, 40, $50 million a year than you would have thought. You're like, man, wow, I didn't realize your business was that big. And
Oh,
it
it's
is.
amazing the weird businesses that you find that are doing just insane amounts of money, doing the most random, obscure, just the weirdest stuff. I talked to a guy a few weeks ago. He makes bike horns,
Mm,
like bike horns, like the old school
yeah.
honky honk ones.
Right.
They're doing north of 20 million revenue a year making
Mm,
bike horns.
mm.
Like
The weirdest, these guys weren't, they were the SBA range. They weren't doing bike horns. It was weird though, because they put, if you've seen the DHL trucks, they got those balls on the back of the floor. Those are actually ball bearings, and they make those. I didn't even know that was a
smart,
company, right?
of
And so
course,
you come
great,
across
great
things,
company.
people were like, man, what kind of company would you recommend? I'm like, well, I find stuff like this that I didn't even know existed. So like, how,
Mm.
it's impossible. Maybe we should start there. Let's talk about from a buyer's perspective, because buyers that we work with mainly are doing, it's usually not PE. It's usually kind of entrepreneurs who are buying a second business or a third business or whatever. And one of the questions we get asked is what should I look for? And I always say start wider than you think, whether that's geo or industry, because you're not
Hmm.
sure what's out there, and you'd be amazed at some of the stuff that will come through that I could have never told you to go look for, and you never
Hmm.
would have asked me to look for. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah,
So, if you're a buyer right now listening or thinking about buying,
yeah.
what's kind of your guidance to people on how to think about buying a business from a industry or geo perspective?
Yeah. I mean, sort of, kind of a few, just more than that. It's about sort of, well, a few of them. My first advice to people, and I, as you might imagine, now I've gotten a reputation for this, so it's a constant question. And I try to tell people my favorite is to say, look for something that's not sexy, right? So don't, to your point, I harp on about how HVAC companies are maybe the best businesses on the freaking planet because they're so easy. You get your paid before you do the work or right after you do the work.
Right.
There's all these great things. So any kind of service business or unsexy stuff, I think is really great. But the other advice I'd give to buyers is that there are tons and tons of businesses that you didn't really know were making money
Mhm.
that fit your skill set. So buyers, I right now have one of my best friends. She was a pretty high executive at a number of companies, and I'm trying to explain to her that you have to apply what your skills are such that you can improve a company, right? So if you're really good at marketing or design, you're like, well, that's useless if I'm buying an HVAC company. Well, maybe not, because all HVAC is truly a lead flow, lead gen business, and having good marketing, good branding is vital, because that makes you distinguished from, the 75-year-old guy that has a picture of a plumber on his truck that's been there for 40 years, right? I mean, so like finding what your particular skill set can improve upon, whilst also remembering when you buy a business that like you gotta don't change things too much either. Like you need to keep it, you gotta know what was working and what worked well, because there's a magic to these businesses, because it's so rare to be successful. But like those are the two things that I always want buyers to know is like, don't try and buy the bright shiny thing, buy something that's not sexy, but buy something that your unique expertise or something you're good at or something you like or any of that is present, that it'll help with the business, because that's the key. And I've seen that so many times through all these years.
No, it's funny because if someone comes, they call us and they'll talk about maybe buying a business, and then we'll say, well, what do you want? And they'll say, I'm kind of open to anything. And I'll say, okay, well, when you say anything, do you mean, SaaS, tech, stuff like that? And they say, maybe. And I'll say, okay, I love SaaS tech people, but they're a bit crazy. They're a bit crazy.
Yeah.
Their valuations are unrealistic.
Insane.
So before you say you want to do this, I'm happy for you to go buy that, but are you really prepared to understand what they're going to ask for? And what we found is a lot of people say yes until they see the valuations they want, and they go no. And it's to your point, like that is kind of the sexy thing to go buy. And it's like, well, right. And maybe those are great companies, maybe they're not. That's a separate debate about that industry. But the perception of that industry is extreme top dollar value, even if the company's negative AR, negative profitability, but they got $2 million ARR, and like, oh, I'll sell for $40 million. It's like, well, you're not even making money right now. Like, I mean, you're making money, but you're not profiting.
Making money, yeah. But if you find a really good service business that isn't HVAC, but like another space, it's making 800,000 profit a year, a few million revenue, you can buy that thing for $2.25 million, which you can put 10% down with SBA. So for $200,000, you can buy a business that's doing $800,000 a year in profit, right? Like that is the magic of this business, because that you literally can take what is at this point, frankly, basically a down payment on a house in most parts of this freaking country, and you can buy a business that's already profiting $800,000. You'll make your return of capital after debt service in a year or two. I mean, that is like the sweet spot. Versus if you try and buy some SaaS business where they're making your dog look like a cartoon or something, right? That they want 10x for, it's take you years, and you're gonna pray that it's not gonna be that one guy in his basement isn't gonna write you out of a business with a few lines of code. No, I'm all about making sure that you look at the multiples and don't get distracted by the shiny.
Yeah. And another thing is just on that mindset is I tell people to dream bigger than what you're dreaming, but I think we've kind of made that in our society to be Elon Musk, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs. And it's like, no. You buy a business that's doing $1 million, $2 million a year in EBITDA, or 800K or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Well, dreaming big is just maybe an 8-figure exit, which is just $10 million. It doesn't mean it's not done, right? So dreaming big, we have to really reorientate what dream big means, because dream big is just sometimes 2 or 3xing the current company's size. That is really big. And we've kind of said dream big means you're going to be this elite thing that less than 1% of the population even has a skill set, desire, or wants to do.
Or wants. Can you imagine the pressure to be Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or those guys? I'd much rather have 10 or $20 million in an exit and have an incredible life and support my family and my family's family and my friends and than I would ever want to be a billionaire. Could you imagine? I think that the true success is being able to provide and be comfortable, and it's just it's a much more rewarding life, I think, because you can be generous and give and still maintain your anonymity and all day. That's the American dream.
You're not competing with Bezos either. Like that's the other thing is, if you're playing in the tech world, you're competing with people who probably are smarter than you. And
that's true. That's the other thing too. The business, like to your point, right now there's so many business owners that I talk to every day that are at that stage where they're most of them gotten through kind of that all the COVID drama with their business and the ups and downs with that and the employment. They're in their late 60s, early 70s. They love their business, but they're so burnt out. They have a great business, no reason to sell, but it's just time for them to move on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they want to find, then their kids, no one's kids ever want to do what their dad did anymore, their mom did. So they want to find the right person to kind of take over what they've done. And there's growth opportunities. They're willing to help. They love their business. They're not going to disappear on you. And they want someone who can help them. And it's like you're into the tech world. They're going to try and eat you alive and buy you out and destroy you. In this one, the person who's selling to you is going to want to help you. Half the customers and the vendors want to help you. Yeah. It's like, it's corny, but I call it it's all aligned incentives. You buy these business and there's not a single person who's upset in the deal. You've made someone really wealthy. You've let them retire. You're keeping the employees going. You're learning what's best from them. You have a mentor. Your bank is getting paid interest rates. You're making money. There's just no one losing in these scenarios. And it's just so much more clean and so much more kind of the goodwill and good feelings. Like I've done some of the big SaaS stuff, nothing like Facebook's or like Instagram stuff, but like large SaaS plays. And it's much more competitive. There's too many little like young MBA lawyers who are getting in the fire and trying to like eke their little bit. The hustle is so big. And I just don't think the reward is that worth it. And it's also like, it's feast or famine. Like you can also lose everything so quickly. Yeah. So I agree.
So go back to one thing you said earlier. If this is a searcher and maybe an entrepreneur who's buying a second business, but definitely for searchers, one of the things that they will say is, I want a business doing 1 to 2 million EBITDA. And what I always say is, understand that the competition is maybe the highest. It is the highest ever been at that space. What are your thoughts on encouraging first-time searchers to go look for something that's doing, we'll call it $1 million top line, donors bringing home 300,000 to 400,000, something like that. Taking the mentality that you said about the skill set of marketing or sales or whatever, and then bringing it to that business. Because to me, I talked to a lot of owners at that size, and they are kind of frustrated. They're always frustrated about the valuation, but we talk about that with sellers.
Of course they are. Yeah. Fair enough, right?
Yeah. But the other thing is, they also don't believe they have a sellable business, which means if you can get them on valuation, you can get a good deal. Mm-hmm. If you are as talented as you think you are, you can then grow it because it has a ton of meat on the bone. So if you're really good at sales and marketing stuff, and they don't have that, well, you can instantly infuse that company and grow it. So now all of a sudden you can grow it, you can cover your debt better. And then if you want to expand, everyone wants to do the roll up these days. Yeah. Guess what? You actually know what it takes to manage a company like this, what the hurdles are. And so you go buy your second or third deal, you're light years ahead because.
Well, and I think it's a fun fact if you're using an SBA loan, which I'm not sure how much your audience knows, but if you're in the same sort of business area, you can pay no down to buy that next business and buy that next business if you're already in that. So there's a financial benefit too.
Yeah. So do you think that more first-time searchers should look for those, what I call smaller deals, Main Street deals? Do you think they should do that? Or because some people say, no, there's too much hair on it. That,
I think it depends. I before I got into all this, I sold, I should get my history a little bit, but I sold a company and I hated my business broker, and it made me want to pursue and do like a different model, which is like, instead of being a used car salesman, to be more of a just straightforward, like honest, open, clear communication, no lying, like the methodology with that. But I got, at previous points in my life, I've gotten into a lot of real estate, and I went for the cheapest possible real estate because it seemed like the ROI would be better. But the tenant quality and things, it's been a nightmare. I'm still it's, very mixed bag in that world. And I think the same is true of a business. So yes, I think that people get way too aggressive and they think that they want a 2 million EBITDA, which, profit business, because it makes sense to scale it and whatever. When there's so many good businesses that are doing $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 in kind of profit on $1 million revenue or something, let's say, and there's so much opportunity, right? Like a lot of those businesses that are doing 2 million, they've optimized their marketing already. There's not a lot of room for growth because they've pushed. So you have to kind of expand laterally in that world. Versus if you find a nice little business that's doing $300,000-$400,000 a year profit, it's like 8-9 people. It's like there's so much room to grow. And I think that more so than the number itself, what I'd say is look for the business where you can see and like within that business, you can see that growth. You're like, oh, they don't market at all. Right. They're doing 300,000 profit. There's absolutely room. They have capacity to triple the work that they do with the same staff. But so if I throw some money at marketing, if I get a little more creative with the branding and the stuff, then I know I can grow this organically really easily, right? Like that's, I think, more so than the exact price. It's sort of how much room do you see there being growth without having to do any acquisitions or do some crazy large amount of work, right? So, but but also I have people like, I do think though that there is a sort of a low point where I think that you shouldn't, a business that's doing like 100,000 a year profit, it's really, I think that there's sort of a minimum, even if you're a beginner, because you need to have some sort of that like magic of success has to already have happened for that company for it to make sense for you to want to come in. Because some of those, when you're not super profitable early on, it gets really, really hard to kind of come into that world and like make it work. So that's the only advice I'd give is absolutely. As a searcher too, I'd say the other thing, it depends on how experienced you are operating a business too, right? Because, I have searchers that I absolutely love and have done the best for me as a for my sellers buying businesses. But I've also had some that come in, they have all the bona fides on paper from their schooling and what they've done, but they haven't actually really ran or managed employees, for instance.
Yeah.
So I had a guy, he bought a fencing company in the Northern California area. And within 2 years, he ran it into the ground because he thought that he knew better than like the tattooed up like redneck type guy that ran it. And this guy was like, from private equity and he has MBA and he's like, I'm going to turn this thing around and make it amazing. But he's not a likable guy. No one wanted him to build their fence. He tried to outsource everything and it totally failed. Right. So it's like, you gotta, if you have start small if you haven't had that experience enough, and you got to get that real world experience too. Cause there's nothing like, you can be smart, you can be really well educated and all that, and you are not going to be good at doing most businesses because like real business takes a lot of human to human connection, and you got to pursue that. Like know what you're buying, and don't get yourself too deep with some huge business if you don't know that you can handle it.
Yeah, I was talking to a business the other day. His business nets $2 million a year. Okay, he had to replace his top person recently, and so he's going to rehire someone to take that role. But he had a manager that ran the business for him. And I said, okay, well, what's your interest in selling? He goes, I've got a wife, we're in our 50s, and I just don't want this, if I die, this to all fall apart, and I could capitalize off of it. And he goes, but I was working 10 hours a week, but even when I was working 10 hours a week, if I went on vacation and there's a problem, I still had to stop what I was doing and answering. And so I think there's kind of a myth out there that once you get to a certain size, like, it's like, no. He's netting $2 million a year. Who doesn't want to take that? Well, at this point, he doesn't, because when he goes to Europe on a vacation, he doesn't want to have to answer the phone call when the time zone's so different that he has to get up because you never lose that responsibility. So I think it's helpful for people to stop and go, if you're going to buy a 1 to 2 million EBITDA business, good for you. That's great. No, I'm not opposed to that, of course. But there might be a little bit of a myth that you just sit back and collect checks and you don't do anything. No. That at that size, that's not the problem. And the way, at Elon Musk's size, that's also that's not how it works.
Right. Of course. Yeah.
There's always fires going on. So let's
that whole the thing, that is one thing I like, is that whole the pressure. Like I work 10 hours a week, I have a very easy life, but at the end of the day, the burden's on me. I can have all the managers in the world, but if I wake up in Europe every morning, I'm in a panic that something's gone wrong, and that is a big thing that I've had to understand, because I've been like, why would you sell this? You work 10 hours a week, you're never present. And it's like, well, it's like this burden on my shoulders. Like it's at the back of my neck at all times. I have this like fear of it all collapsing. And a lot of people that are very aggressive entrepreneurs or business owners, that's sort of their personality type. It's all or nothing. So even though they can detach themselves, the burden's always on their shoulders. And that's actually one thing just I wanted to point out, that that's a really good thing to find as when you're a buyer trying to buy a business. You want to find those kind of people because they're going to sell you a great business, and they might have a much easier day to day than other businesses, but they can't shake that. And I think that's kind of a really good marker of a good seller as a buyer, if you're looking for a business.
Yeah. And so let's turn the sellers down. I think that, again, when you I love X or Twitter, where we call it these days. I think there's information out there, but it's also, I kind of call it a myth, a world of myths, because people say, well, why would you want to sell that business? Well, because I just told you why. It's a great business. It's fantastic.
Yeah,
he's just tired of doing it. He's ready to go on. And so when you're in your career and you're in your 20s or 30s or 40s and you're looking to really charge ahead, that's not where you might be when you're 50 or 60. The other thing that I've seen is the debate over the silver tsunami. And what I've come to realize, at least my belief is that so like I started running a small business when I was 22, and the reason I got that opportunity because my dad owned one, and he was going to retire. So he's like 63 now, I think. So you can do the math. Which is, so I'm 38, so you can do the math. It's
I just turned 38 last week.
I'll be 39. I'll be 39 in July. So we're the same. So 16 years ago, I started running companies because my dad 16 years ago had made so much money on a business that wasn't sellable that he was ready to hang it up. So we see the silver tsunami. People are like, well, why isn't this happening? And I think it's because we've portrayed that these businesses have to be this certain way to be bought. And for so many sellers, they didn't grow up in this era, right? So 20 years from now, so many more businesses will be set up to sell. They'll have all these check marks that we want them to have. But right now, I think what we really see the problem with the silver tsunami, if there is a problem, is that people have an expectation that the companies were never built upon. They weren't built upon thinking about SBA buyers. That wasn't really the market.
No, never. No, of course. Yeah, you do your taxes in the way that works the best for you, that does things. You put your family, you do, there's a million things. And people also, people own businesses. A lot of them, just the small, businesses you're talking about, they want to pay their people. They want to make a little money, and then they want to go to the golf course when it's time. They want to lead a good life, right? They're not optimizing for profit. So it's hard for them though, like you said earlier, when they go to sell and their valuation is quite low, because it's like, oh, well, technically you've only actually been making a couple $100,000 a year. And the guy's like, well, what do you mean? I do $4 million a year. We employ 150 people. I have 2 shops. It's such a big business. And I was like, and I say, it's true. You have an incredible business, but unfortunately, like it at this stage, at this level, there are many ways to value a company, of course, but like the main way you do it is off of profit and a multiple of that. Right. So you may have a company that's doing $4 million in revenue, but it might be worth $800,000 in terms of for a buyer to come in. And so it's a really hard thing to think about. And it's right. And I think it's true about, I think a lot of businesses, like you said, we call it silver tsunami. I think a lot are in that spot. And I think that they are. And to one thing that's happening is a lot of those people are getting advice now. Like I have probably 20, 30 businesses that are in that pool that I'm just helping with their tax returns, doing all that kind of stuff, so that when they're ready to sell, that they'll be prepared, because I'm not going to sell. Like I only list businesses that I know I can sell and that I really believe in the person and I'm doing right by them. Like I have so many people that have come to me and I said, look, you can't sell right now. I can get you $1 million for that business, but you're a $5 million business. Right. Let's just take a year and a half, take 2. I know it sucks. See if you can get management, and maybe in that process you'll find enough management that you don't need to sell. Because I want people to be successful and happy. It doesn't have to be through me that they sell. So often I'll say, go find some good, like a lot of people, right? There's no management level, right? So I'll be like, look, go find somebody who's like more of a middle management for you, can help you take some burden off your shoulders, but also it makes you more valuable because it means that it's a more robust company. And I said, it very well maybe likely that you don't want to sell at that stage because you've taken the burden, the thing that you're trying to come to me for, but I don't care, because A, you refer me to everybody that you know, but B, you in 5 years, when you're finally ready, I can sell your business at a much better place for a lot more money, and then you're going to get the retirement you deserve, right? So that's starting to happen, where people are kind of getting guidance, I think, from all kinds of people. But yeah, it's a good point.
Well, and I always, like you said earlier, when I'm talking to a business owner, I always lead with transparency. I'm not trying to convince them to sell. The worst thing that you can do if you're a business owner is let someone talk you into selling, because you probably won't sell. You probably won't sell. It's probably not worth what you thought it was worth, or what they told you.
It's a nightmare process. It takes a freaking year almost at this point. I mean, it's of course.
And then when you get down to it, you're gonna go, I didn't really want to do this. Do I really want to do it? And so first off, never be convinced to sell. You got to want to sell, which leads me to my second point. When I'm talking to owners, I say, okay, you either need to build your business to be sellable, not that you have to sell it, but just so it's set up when you decide to do that. It should make as you said, makes your life a little bit easier. Or don't build to be sellable and then invest in other things, right? Real estate, something like that. You can do both, of course. You can kind of split the difference on that. But I think so many owners right now are not really doing either, right? They're just taking the profit and they're minimizing taxes. With more power to you if that's your strategy. But when you go to sell, it won't work. And then you didn't invest in stocks or real estate or whatever your preference is. And so then you have no kind of retirement and you can't get the big exit. So I mean, what do you think about that? Do you think that's kind of the 2 paths that they should choose? And again, you can do both if you do it right. Yeah. Kind of pick one of those paths and go down it. Or is there a third option I'm missing there?
No, 100%. I mean, my mom is reaching retirement age, and she's got a business, and she sort of hasn't, of recent years, I've been helping her, but she was so focused on supporting her employees and her staff that she would, like in 2008, instead of laying people off and having them get unemployment, she just kept a line of credit going,
Mm-hmm.
and to be able to pay her staff when there was no work
Mm-hmm.
forever, and got herself in $500,000 debt, just because she didn't want these people. She hated the idea of having to lay off her employees that she loved, but they could have absolutely gotten laid off, been on unemployment, and they could have come back better, stronger, better.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, like less people, you got to really think smartly about making sure that you're successful to do what is right for your employees and
Mm-hmm.
also for yourself on the business level. And similarly, yes, you should be obviously getting a diversified plan, getting some real estate. Like the best sellers that I know, they absolutely have really good investments, both in more of the stock markets and funds and all that, but they also have real estate on the side. Like, in fact, I'd say 60-70% of my sellers, because I'm typically a little higher market,
Yeah.
they all have a real estate portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them have opportunities. They're like, you know what, I've realized that the pendulum has swung where I can take the money from this business and invest that in these various real estate projects that'll get me that annuity that I really want. And that's kind of why they're selling. So I think it's really important to kind of have, and also you learn a lot. Like, through my buying of, I think I have 22 or something buildings in upstate New York now.
Oh, wow.
And I've learned so much about business
Mm-hmm.
through doing that, because it's a business to have rental properties and stuff, right? It is a business. And so I think there's also a lot to be learned and gleaned and gained from that beyond your like scope of whatever business it is that you're running as a seller or as a buyer, thinking that this is like, this is one path to the greater, the greater whole of what you are. Because at some level, I don't know about you guys, but for me, I achieved a moment some years ago where I realized that I'm going to be fine if if like, because of my real estate stuff, I have enough monthly income coming in
Mm-hmm.
that if the deals don't happen or things don't go my way, like I'm going to be fine. Right.
Mm-hmm.
My family's going to be fine. My brand new kid is going to be, all these things happen. And that moment is all about having a diversity of funds. Right.
Yeah.
So if your main thing collapses, you get enough stuff going on around you that you're going to be fine and that you have time to rebuild. And I think that is freeing too, because then you can say no to the work you don't like. You can say no to the things that you're worried about. You don't wake up in panic, and that's just a more well-rounded, good life as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. I know it's the clock. You got time for one more question, or do we need to hop?
No, sure. Let's go for it.
So the final thing for a prospective seller, and we were talking about this offline, so I'll kind of talk about this. One thing, if you're a business owner right now, don't be embarrassed that you don't understand the M&A process. I've talked to owners of we have a deal right now for one of our clients. It's going to close for $75 million, and they miscalculated their EBITDA by, they said it was 5, and it ended up being like 8 or 10 million. So don't, you would think those guys don't. No. You are in the majority of people who don't understand EBITDA and all this. So don't be embarrassed of that. Ask questions. You don't come across as stupid. You come across as, in the majority, normal. So with that being said, one of the things that I'm curious your thoughts on, if you're going to sell, if you think about selling today, obviously my advice is to get a valuation, have your internal, what you want to sell for, and then get a valuation, right? So then you understand how far off you are. Okay. If you're there, maybe you sell, maybe you don't. If you're way off, though, let's say you're way off. Say you want to sell for 10, you're at 5. What I think really is, in today's market, the best thing to do is to go do a quick, I say quick, there's no quick in this industry, but a quick, roll up, buy out, whatever you call it, either vertical integrate or however you want to do that, of 2 or 3 businesses and get there in 24-ish months instead of focusing on organic growth, because organic growth has only gotten you to where you're at.
You're saying as a seller to get
so
to your number, to
right
do
now,
acquisitions, to do add-ons.
If you're a seller right now, because that's what we come across a lot of, is sellers who don't get what they want. And the reason they can't get there is because their organic growth has prohibited them from getting there. And so if it's a small margin, like you need another million bucks, maybe organic growth can do it. But if you really want to get, 4 or 5, more $1 million, what is the best path? Is it triple down on organic? Is it acquisition? Like, what is your recommendation? Because most sellers don't, when they get the number, it's not uncommon to be disappointed. It's like, okay,
right. Oh, no. It's super common. And it is. Well, yes, I mean, if you can do that, I mean, the problem is like, yes, I think the easiest path is let's just say you have whatever company that you're running, and there's another company that's for sale that's smaller than you that you can easily get a loan on, and then it can increase your bottom line, by whatever amount. Like that obviously is the best way. But it's hard because integrating it, running that other business, the people there, the culture, like it's not an easy thing to integrate. And so I've seen people like on its core, and if it's right, yes, but don't try and fit a square peg in a round hole. When it comes to trying to, you can't, like, just buying a business does, like, these guys do all these roll-ups, right? They
Yep.
do 1 million roll-ups,
Mm-hmm.
and people are finding that they have to kind of keep them very separate and only
Mm-hmm.
combine at very small places to make it all work, because again, every company has such a unique culture and magic to it. So like, yes, that is definitely an avenue to go if you're trying to kind of hit your number. But at that point, you're more of like an entrepreneur. I think you can do that. You can expand. You need to find a good operator for the other business, because it's really hard to like slot in and run 2 businesses at once. I sold a company in New Hampshire recently, and the owner did that, trying to sort of like do this, and just never showed up. And so the employees didn't know what to do, and it wasn't great. So it's like, just know that like life might be a little tricky for a while, but that is definitely a way to fast forward and get that number, for sure. And then the other thing too is like internally optimizing. I mean, to look at ways to just, like I said earlier, like thinking outside the box, looking at different businesses, trying to see where there could be potential growth, or like paths to new markets and all of that, right? And that might just be through acquisition. It might be through a really targeted hire of somebody in another area that lets you get into a new. So I had a company in LA that was a cell phone tower maintenance and repair company, and they had a key employee who wanted to move up to like this, called the Bay Area, Sacramento area, and they were really upset about it. But then they empowered that guy, and they said, why don't you go start an office for us up there? Your family's there, you know people. And so now they're making 30-40% of their revenue from their Sacramento office, that their one employee who wanted to go get married and have kids and leave the Los Angeles area because he hated it, right? And now they've increased their business by 40%. So there's sort of another path. So it's like acquisition, or empowering people, or finding people to expand or partner with you. Not like franchising your business, but letting people take some of the reins and see what can happen in a way that protects you, obviously. I mean, don't want to.
No, I think that's great. And yes, I think that's great. And if you're listening to this and you go, that's a great idea, then ask yourself, why haven't you done it already? Because you got to have the personality to hire and empower, right? And so it shouldn't be an either or. I'm not suggesting that acquisition is the only way. But again, we're kind of in this new cycle, and so many businesses don't think about acquisition. But there's different ways to grow through organic growth. And if organic growth hadn't gotten you there, then you have to ask why I haven't done it. And it's probably because what you just said, they weren't willing to do. So you got to go, okay, I've got to change things. Organic growth, when people think about it, usually it's like, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. I'm going to get there. It's like, you're probably not. And that's why you're not, unless you've just had hockey stick growth and you just hadn't gotten there yet. If you've had steady growth, the reason you're not there is because you haven't developed the skill sets, the tools, the systems, et cetera, to get there, which means so buying a business is a radical change. Growing to double your exit price is a radical change. It's a radical change, whatever it is.
100%.
And so people say, well, I want $4 million. I'm like, well, you can sit around until inflation gets you to $4 million, but it's the same as when you were today. Like nothing changed. So
like, what are you going to do to get there? What's the growth tail? And sort of, if they can't, I mean, part of it, people want to hire multiple, but the higher multiples happen when there's growth potentials and there's things there that you're leaving on the table. A lot of people want their 5-6 times multiple, but they have a business that's more or less stayed flat for 10 years. And they're like, well, you could do this, you could do that, you could do that. You'll own half of the planet, And you're like, really? Then why haven't you done it?
That's exactly
and in some cases it truly is. It's because I've been playing golf and having my kids and been valuing my grandkids, right? Like that is, I have a company now in California that is absolutely the story. They are gone 6 months of the year. It's just on cruise control. But I've had to tell them, I'm like, look, guys, the reality though is that your multiple is going to be less now because you flattened, you're not growing. When I first talked to you, you were growing, and don't take the foot off the gas. That is a big thing. If you want to sell, especially if you have high ambitions with that, you got to keep that pedal on the gas, and maybe you can find someone else to help you push that pedal. But it's really important, because the moment that you step back from that stuff, it can really, really shift you're about to sell for. I mean, it's amazing how quickly a few $100,000 in revenue can really affect that bottom line, right? Because it's not a linear thing. If you make $4 million revenue normally and you end up making 3-5, but you keep all your employees and all your expenses, like that could shrink your whole profit by 40%, just a few $100,000 of top line. Yep. So you really, and I'm saying a lot of acronyms here, but it's still, it's something to really, really consider.
No, absolutely. Sure. Okay. Listen, this has been great. Enjoyed the conversation. So people that are thinking about selling or buying, I think you or want to think about selling even. It sounds like you're going to buy.
Selling. Yeah, we're a sell
No,
side. So I mean,
only sell. Okay.
I assist with buying and on a personal level and with my own deals. But yeah, no, businessexits.com, and yeah, we have great listings. Anything, my junior brokers do anything deals that are $1 million up to in the mid hundreds, and we have just it's great. Our whole thing is that we don't we don't do we just have a really good model, right? Where it's all about trust. Anyone can cancel anytime as a seller. And it's just, we really pride ourselves on being the kind of the unbroker as best as possible, because, there are ones in this industry that they just heard about M&A one day and they were selling their used Pintos in some car dealership. And then here they are trying to represent businesses when they've never ran one. So we try and do that a little differently. And it's all about relationships for us and just,
Okay. So businessexits.com, anywhere else you want people to connect with you at?
No, that's businessexits.com is fine. And it was really, really great to chat with you. And I love what you're doing here. This is really neat. Explaining this world to people. It's amazing how it's like people don't know about this world, and then some switch hits, they read some tweet, they hear something sometime, and this whole new world. People just think that real estate and stocks are the only way to gain wealth, and it is this whole world that no one knows about it. So getting more word out there and more people understanding, and I love that you're doing this, because it's really important, because it changes people's lives for the better, and it is good for the economy. It's good for people's employment. It's just such a great thing to be in at this level, when you're not, big $1 billion titans smacking each other off pedestals. It's a really good world down here,
Well, thank you for that. And what we like doing is talking to, I think if we changed our tagline to help, we exist to build the economy, or I don't, I've got the fast, but it sounds kind of corny, but it's true, because I love what you're saying is that, I used to be super competitive. I wanted to crush competitors. I want to do all this stuff. And it's like, no. They've got skill sets that I don't have. I have skill sets they don't have. There's plenty of meat on the bone. Why? Like, I want us all to succeed. I want everybody to have jobs. I want everybody to do well. I want the economy to do well, because that's good for me. I've got a 16-year-old who's walking by my office right now, and I got a 5-year-old in there. And so why would I want that? And so if you can lead with that mentality of transparency, trying to provide value, trying to help grow the economy, trying to do those things, I think that's just such a better spot to be than trying to be super competitive. This is not the NBA or the NFL where there's only 32 of us and we've got to compete to win. There's plenty of stuff out there.
Plenty of stuff. Yeah. Never, you can always pivot and always get smart. I mean, it's just not, the pool is plenty big. It's an ocean, so we all want to succeed.
Well, thank you for coming on the show today, and look, best of luck. We'll probably get you on again in the future. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
For sure. Yeah. Take care, guys.